Good evening.
Good evening.
This meeting of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission will now come to order. Today is Thursday, October 13th, and the time is 6:05 p.m. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, it's wonderful to be in Flagstaff this evening, and so great to see such a wonderful turnout. We know this has been a difficult week for your city, and the Commission again extends its condolences on the loss of Chief Cooper. We're very sorry about that, and appreciate you all coming out tonight and participating in the process. Let's go around the table and talk about who's here tonight. Linda McNulty, Commissioner, and Vice Chair Herrera are both present. The other two commissioners, Scott Freeman and who's Vice Chair, as well as Richard Sturtz, are not attending tonight, but I'm sure they're watching this streaming online. Not all the commissioners go to all of the meetings. And so we're all kind of taking turns and divvying it up accordingly. So I'm sure they're watching online tonight. And given the very fancy technology and the beautiful chambers that we're in, I'm sure it's very easy for them to follow along on the internet as well as everyone else tuning in tonight. Other folks around the room include our legal counsel, Mary O'Grady, our mapping consultant, Andrew Dreschler, and Corinne Belock. We have a court reporter, Marty Herder, who's taking an accurate transcript of tonight's events. Christina Gomez is our Deputy Executive Director. She's in the back, along with Lisa Schmeling, Christy Olson, Stu Robinson, who's our Public Information Officer. And I think that is all the crowd, all the staff that we have here tonight. So please feel free to talk to any of those folks should you need anything or want to give them anything to give to us. They'll be happy to take that from you. So I have a very large stack of request to speak forms. It's very impressive that all of you are wanting to provide testimony tonight. So most of you are familiar with this form, but it is in the back. If anybody didn't get one and would like to address us tonight, please fill it out, and we'll be getting to the public comment portion of our hearing very shortly. But we do need a request to speak form from you if you'd like to go on the record tonight. We have a translator this evening. It's part of complying with federal law, and I'm hoping that Dr. Vasquez is in the audience. Oh, great. Would you like to come up and say a few words of introduction in English and Spanish for the group?
Right here, okay?
Sure.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Miguel Vasquez. I'll be translating this evening for anyone who needs Spanish interpretation. Buenas tardes, me llamo Miguel Vázquez y voy a estar traduciendo aquí si hay alguien que necesita intérprete en español. ¿Hay alguien presente que necesita que traduzco? Okay, I don't see anyone.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
If anyone does not want to address the commission tonight, but would like to just submit input to us anyway, you can do that on the blue forms. I didn't mention that, but there should be blue forms in the back at the table, and you can fill that out, and it will get entered into the record the same as it would as if you were giving the testimony tonight at the microphone. With that, I don't think there's any more housekeeping items. So we'll go to the next item on the agenda, which is our mapping consultant will give an introductory presentation to the process. Mr. Dreschler.
Good evening. Good evening. We're here today to discuss the draft maps that have been presented by the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. The draft maps are currently under a 30-day review, and that's one of the main reasons we're here today, is we want to hear input on the maps, what your thoughts are, what you like, what you would change, and anything else that you want to comment on the maps. Before we display the two draft maps, the congressional draft map and the legislative draft map, we wanted to just go over a quick overview of the process. I have a presentation that you can see on the screens. Arizona's redistricting process is governed by the state constitution as amended by voters in 2000 with the passage of Proposition 106. It stipulates that the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission redraw Arizona's congressional and legislative districts to reflect the results of the most recent census. Due to the 2010 census, Arizona gained a congressional seat. So we're going from 8 congressional seats to 9. What are the main guidelines of Proposition 106? A, must comply with U.S. Constitution and Voting Rights Act, and B, equal population. Those two are federally mandated. The other 4 are to the extent practicable. The districts must be compact and contiguous, respect communities of interest, use visible geographic features, city, town, and county boundaries, and undivided census tract. F, favor competitive districts where no significant detriment to other goals. Just wanted to quick go over the Voting Rights Act. Arizona's congressional and legislative districts must receive pre-clearance or approval from the Department of Justice or a federal court under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act before they can take effect. To get pre-clearance, Arizona must demonstrate that the new districts do not discriminate against minority voters in purpose or effect, which means there can be no intentional or accidental discrimination. Under Section 5, Arizona's redistricting plans cannot be retrogressive. The plans cannot weaken or reduce minority voters' rights. The presence of discrimination can be determined by analyzing population data and election results. So just wanted to go over the timeline of the commission, and there's sort of 6 big steps, main steps involved. This first step was setting up the commission. Back earlier this year, the commissioners were appointed following a thorough screening process, and each of the 5 commissioners are serving in a voluntary role. The commissioners are Vice Chair Scott Freeman, Vice Chair Jose Herrera, who's with us tonight, Chair Colleen Mathis, who's here tonight, Commissioner Linda McNulty, who's here tonight, and Richard Sturts. Next was the first round of hearings. Before drawing a single line, the Commission held 23 public hearings around the state in July and August to get input from members of the public about issues relevant to redistricting, such as geography, communities of interest, minority voting rights, and competitiveness. The third step was the mapping. After the first round of hearings, we started with the grid map, which was approved on August 18th. And per Proposition 106, the grid map took 2 things into consideration: equal population and compactness. Since adopting the grid maps, the Commission had met more than 25 times to consider adjustments to the grid to accommodate all of the state constitutional criteria. During this time, they received additional public comment and draft maps. Approval of the draft maps. On October 3rd, the Commission approved the draft congressional map that incorporated the changes based on all the constitutional criteria. And just a few days ago, on October 10th, it approved the legislative maps. Step 4, second round of hearings. Currently, we're in the process of visiting 25 towns and cities to share the draft maps and receive additional public input during the month of October. After this step, they will be working on the final maps. Upon completion of the public comment period, the Commission will adopt the final maps, and then the final step in the redistricting process is pre-clearance. Because Arizona is subject to Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, the district maps must be approved by the Federal Department of Justice or a federal court in Washington, D.C. before they can be used for Arizona elections. Before we show you the congressional draft map, we just wanted to go through the process. This is the last map this was the map that was approved by the last commission based off of the 2000 census and most recently used in 2010. This is the starting point. Per Proposition 106, they asked us to start with a blank map, so we started with a blank map. And as we discussed earlier, we did a grid map, and this was the congressional grid map that was approved on August 18. And now you have the congressional draft map shown here. Some of the highlights of the draft map is it has 2 predominantly rural districts, 3 border districts, 2 districts in the city of Tucson, 5 districts that are entirely in Maricopa County. It avoids splitting Arizona's Indian reservation, and 2 districts where minority voters have the opportunity to elect their candidate of choice. The legislative maps followed a very similar process, and just wanted to show this was the map that was approved by the last commission and most recently used in the 2010 elections. And just like the congressional map, we started with a blank map. And then we came up with the grid map on August 18th. And the grid map, again, took into consideration 2 things, and 2 things only. It took into consideration equal population and compactness. So it did not consider the other 4 criteria. And finally, once the other 4 criteria and public comments were taken into consideration, this is where we came up with the draft map. And this was the draft map that was approved just on Monday. So some highlights of the draft map. In the current map that we just saw on a couple slides back, the old districts, the population ranges from 155,000 to 378,000. So obviously, given the change in shift in population, we had to change the districts. So the new map has roughly 207,000 to 215,000. To comply with the Voting Rights Act, the draft map includes 10 districts which minority voters should have the opportunity to elect the candidates of their choice. The draft maps include 3 districts wholly within Pima County and 3 additional southern Arizona districts, 17 districts within Maricopa County, and 9 districts primarily rural. One of the main reasons we're here today is to hear your input, as we stated before, and there's many different ways to give us. You can fill out a request to speak form, the yellow sheet that you saw on the back table, and at the public hearing, and provide us your inputs. Some of the examples of the inputs that we've been hearing and would love to hear is any comments on the constitutional criteria, any comments on the congressional draft map, and any comments on the draft legislative map. You can also submit your input if you are watching online or here in the audience and you don't want to come up and speak today. You can, besides speaking, you can fill out one of the blue public input forms and hand them into one of the staff members. Or you can visit us at our website where we have a section and a link where you can add your comments on there. And the website is www.azredistricting.org, or you can give us a call at 602-542-5221 or toll free 855-REDISTRICT. This is just a shot of our webpage. Just wanted to point out a couple items. This is the home page, and what you will see on the left-hand side, you'll see a link for maps. There's a link for our meetings where you can see other meetings that are going to be taking place for round 2. And you can go view past meetings. So if you wanted to see any of the video and wanted to see the deliberation that the commissioners did during the 25 meetings to come up with the draft map, all of that is online and you can watch that. The public input that I just was talking about, there's the link there. And then besides the map link on top, down at the bottom is the link, or 2 links, one for the draft map and one for the congressional map. If you click on either of those links, you'll come to this screen, which has the 2 draft maps. Obviously, throughout this process, if you go to the maps link, you can find all the what-if maps, the grid maps that were under consideration. So if you wanted to see sort of the process evolving, you can go back and look at those maps. But the 2 main maps that we're looking at are the draft maps, and these are the maps that we want public comment on. One feature that a lot of people have been asking if they wanted to see their district in more detail. You see the red circle around what is the KMZ, or otherwise known as the Google Maps. And if you click on either of those, you'll come to a page, a Google page, and it will show the map. And one of the really nice features about this map is that you're able to click on it, and if you can scroll in and see your exact boundaries and see what the exact boundaries are for your district. One other thing is for the other maps, we have some maps in the back of the room. We have along on the board, and we have a couple blown up maps of Flagstaff area, so you can see the boundaries between the districts surrounding Flagstaff. And finally, we would really like to have you stay connected. You can visit our website at www.azredistricting.org. This gives there's the opportunity to draw your own maps. We have an online mapping software program, so if you'd like to do that and submit those maps, we would take those into consideration. You can watch current meetings, or as I mentioned before, you can go view past meetings, and you can get updates on future meetings. You can follow us at Twitter at #AIRC, or you can friend us at Facebook. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dreschler. So our primary purpose is to be here to listen to you tonight. And to the extent you can give us detailed descriptions of your changes, what you propose needs to be changed, or if you think it's fine the way it is, we'd like to hear that as well. So both sets of comments are welcome, and we'd really like to drill down to the extent we can and hear from you exactly what detailed modifications you think need to be made. And also, if you've thought about what ripple effects those might have around the surrounding areas and how we might mitigate those, that's also helpful. Because as you know, any little change on these maps produces a domino effect, and we need to deal with all the changes that result. So to the extent you can help us out, we'd love to have that. So just a few reminders. We'll start the public comment period now. When you come up to the microphone, once your name's called, please say your name so that the court reporter can type it out, and be sure to spell your last name so that we'll get an accurate accounting. You can state where you live. You don't need to give us your personal address. In fact, we'd prefer if you don't. Just tell us your city, town, or county where you reside. We're going to limit comments tonight to 3 minutes each, just because we have so many folks that would like to speak, and we'd like to give everybody an opportunity tonight. I don't know if we have somebody timing that, because Mr. Forst, our Chief Technology Officer, I don't think is with us this evening, and he's normally our timer. Do we have a timer? Oh, great. Okay, we do. I'm assured we have a timer. So when you hear the timer go off, and if you still have a few things to say, please feel free to say them, but if you could just try to wrap it up soon after, that would be most appreciated. Okay, I think I've covered everything that we need to. I got a few more. Our first speaker tonight is Sarah Pressler, Mayor for the City of Flagstaff.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Sarah Pressler, S-A-R-A-P-R-E-S-L-E-R, Mayor, City of Flagstaff. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, and those that are watching from home, welcome to Flagstaff. We're very glad that you're here, and welcome, of course, to your staff and legal counsel, public information folks, everybody that makes this independent commission work. The people of the state of Arizona, through Proposition 106, established this independent commission, and we respect the hard work and independence that you've offered from the beginning of your work to now, and that I know you'll continue to offer as you move through this 30-day comment period. On behalf of the City of Flagstaff, we know, because we've spent quite a lot of time with you and many members of our business community and both sides of the aisle, including just a few independents who are very important to the future of Arizona, what a difficult task you've had in this process. Tonight, we've got the chairman of the Hopi tribe, Chairman Chingoitua, members of the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission, other tribal members and leadership, and importantly, our neighbors, the Coconino County Board of Supervisors. Our chair, Lena Fowler from Coconino County, is here, and many members of that board. You're going to hear tonight from Councilmember Scott Overton on behalf of the City of Flagstaff. I'll give you a break from my comments in our own community. But I want to share with you that we're a small but mighty community, meaning that our interpreter tonight, Dr. Vasquez, is also a member of the Flagstaff Unified School District School Board. So we know each other well, and we live and work and play in a community, hopefully, that is reflected in the interests that you will be producing in your maps. So I just wanted to take this time to thank you for your work, welcome you to our mountain community, and wish you well through this process. I know you're headed up through Indian country next, and I know our neighbors to the north and the east are looking forward to seeing you. And on behalf of the entire City of Flagstaff and really our greater Flagstaff community, I couldn't be more proud of all of the diverse voices that you'll be hearing here tonight. So this really is democracy in action. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Leroy Shingotawa, Chairman of the Hopi Tribe.
My name is Leroy Shingoitawa, Leroy Shingoitawa. Welcome to the Commission. Thank you for coming to Hopi country, Aboriginal lands that we once occupied. The Hopi tribe today has officially taken a formal action to support what you now present as the congressional map, as well as the legislative map. First and foremost, you have combined all the lands that we now own within northern Arizona, which is east of Flagstaff, up north on the Hopi Reservation, all the way to Eager and Springerville. This has been something that we want to make sure was included in the design that you have put forth to us. Because of this, we feel confident that now that we will have equal representation both in Congress as well as in the state legislative district. I appreciate the fact that in the past 2 times that I did appear before the commission, that as we watched the progress, that we did see you begin to take into account those areas that we were concerned with, as well as other Native groups that are now together in a cluster, that we now will have a voice in what is taking place, not only in the state, but also in the congressional districts. As we watch you go forth, we appreciate the fact that the hard work you've put into this. I know it wasn't easy. Just like anything else in the political scene, it becomes a tough road to follow. Yet, we believe from the Hopi tribe that you have been fair in your assessment. We really appreciate the fact that Nevadakeovi, San Francisco Peaks, has been put into our legislative district as well as the congressional. As you know, this is very special to us, and now with that encompassed in what we desire in our feelings about the districting, we appreciate that. So come Monday, we want to welcome you up both onto the Hopi Navajo Reservation. We look forward to seeing you, and I'm sure that some more of my fellow Hopis will also make some statements supporting what you have given to us today. Wakwai.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Supervisor Matt Ryan, Vice Chairman, Board of Supervisors for Coconino County.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and members of the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. Spelling of my name is M-A-T-T-R-Y-A-N. On behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, thank you for coming to Flagstaff for your second round of public hearings, and thank you again for your hard work and diligence in drafting the congressional and legislative maps for our state. You're doing an awesome job. It's a challenging job, and we acknowledge that. Joining me tonight are some of my fellow board members, Chairman Lena Fowler and Supervisor Mandy Metzger. Supervisor Taylor and Archuleta had family matters that they had to attend to, otherwise they would have been here. First, we were grateful to the Commission for listening to our written and verbal testimony. Our stated values in that regard are regional economic development, ecotourism, transportation, forestry, ranching, and agriculture, institutions of higher learning, rural versus non-rural areas of the county, and tribal nations. Those values and interests with like-minded communities clearly reflect Northern Arizona Congressional District. Therefore, we thank you for listening to our view that we do not share a community of interest with Mojave or Yavapai counties, or at least less so than these other areas. On the day-to-day basis, the issues we face in northern and northeastern Arizona align Coconino County with its longtime neighbors to the east. We have a shared interest in the major public policy issues which impact our constituents, including water, forestry, ranching, agriculture, and regional economic development, to name a few. We have not come to our viewpoints lightly. They have been the result of much conversation and deliberation with our constituents and colleagues in the region and beyond Coconino County borders over the past several months. We also thank you for not combining the proposed Congressional District 1 with Metropolitan Maricopa County. With all that is said, Coconino County supports the IRC's congressional map that places Coconino County in the new Congressional District 1. On the issue of the legislative districts, we have the following comments. We appreciate the thought that has been put into establishing the legislative map and the amount of personal and professional work that it contains. You have been sensitive to the testimony that we have provided over these past few days, weeks, and months, and the testimony of so many of our constituents to keep Greater Flagstaff contained in one legislative district. We also thank you for listening to our tribal communities and addressing their important needs. The board has consistently testified before the IRC for including the areas surrounding the city of Flagstaff in the legislative district. The board supports the concept of the IRC map, but requests that this map support our goal of including Greater Flagstaff in one legislative district. In the current map adopted by the IRC, a portion of the Schultz flood area is in its separate district than the city of Flagstaff, and the entire Schultz flood area split into two separate legislative districts. Specifically, Doney Park is contained in your LD6 and Timberline Fernwood in LD7. As a point of reference, the Schultz flood area includes the Doney Park, Timberline, and Fernwood neighborhoods. The area within the Schultz flood area that is excluded from LD6 is comprised of approximately 3,000 residents who live in the unincorporated area a few miles outside the city of Flagstaff. Most of these residents work, shop in, recreate in Flagstaff, and their children attend the schools in Flagstaff. The flood area is part of a joint regional planning area of the city and the county and is within the Flagstaff Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is consistent with our transportation and community of interest. The neighborhoods within the flood area need to be included in the same legislative district as the city of Flagstaff because the residents identify with Flagstaff and the two communities are interdependent. In order to assist you and your staff in understanding our points and in accommodating our request, we have provided a map in your packet and information on the Schultz flood area. The information was distributed to you prior to the meeting. The County Board of Supervisors believes that it is important to include the entire Schultz flood area in the same legislative district as the city of Flagstaff. I'm losing my place. There we go, got back on it. In addition to this change, our board is requesting that you work with our county elections administrator to make minor corrections to ensure precinct lines work within the current county precinct lines. Our staff will work with your staff to accomplish these objectives. Finally, we would like to thank the commissioners for the inclusion of competitive districts in both the congressional and legislative draft maps. Competitive districts give voters legitimate choices. While we understand that competitiveness cannot be the main criteria for forming districts, it is an important consideration to provide citizens of our state meaningful choices in their representatives at the state legislature and the United States Congress. In closing, we want you to know how much we appreciate the dedication of the IRC members and of your staff. We appreciate the opportunities to express our viewpoints, the many hours you have dedicated to hear the views of the people across Arizona, and for your serious consideration of all perspectives. We have hoped that you will equally seriously consider our concerns that the greater Flagstaff area, including the Shoals Flood area, be included in the same legislative district as the city of Flagstaff. We look forward to working with you in the days to come to address our issues. The board feels strongly that making this change will allow communities' interests to remain intact. And thank you, and good luck for 25 nights of doing this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next speaker is Flagstaff City Councilman Scott Overton.
Good evening, thank you, and I can assure you this is a hearty group, and Commissioner McNulty, you're sitting in my chair, and I keep a small pillow and some snacks right to the right.
Yay.
But good evening, Chairwoman Mathis, Commissioner McNulty, and Commissioner Herrera. Thank you, and it's great to have you in the community of Flagstaff this evening. My name is Scott Overton, that is O-V-E-R-T-O-N. I'd like to recognize just quickly, we also have a number of our other council members with us this evening. Our Vice Mayor, Celia Barretts, is with us this evening, as is Council Member Art Babbitt. And, of course, our Mayor did the welcome. I'm a Flagstaff native and have served in the Flagstaff community since 2006 as a Flagstaff City Council member. As a member of the Flagstaff City Council, it's an honor to provide testimony to you this evening on behalf of the citizens and the City Council. Tonight, I start by acknowledging the hard work of the commissioners, and thank you for your service to the state of Arizona. Like you, being a representative for the citizens in Arizona, the Flagstaff City Council has worked diligently to become informed of the requirements and restrictions that are placed upon the redistricting process. And like you, the commissioners, this City Council has taken great effort to engage our citizens throughout our neighborhoods and communities in northern Arizona. That's evident this evening. This community engagement has taken place in the numerous City Council meetings in these chambers. It has included partnerships that have developed with our business community, local advocacy groups, our county officials, our neighboring communities, tribal nations, and just general interested citizens. That combined have helped us shape a message to you of a unified voice that is hopefully better to assist you at your task. As leaders, we took up the challenge of bringing these ideas and comments together to create a value statement, which you've heard in the past, and I'll reread this evening, that reflect the elements that are most important to the citizens that we serve in this community. Our City Council and our city statement reads, the City of Flagstaff values a redistricting outcome that is first and foremost compliant with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, does not regress in its representation of the native populations in northern Arizona, maximizes competitive districts across the state and includes Flagstaff in such a district. We place value in Flagstaff in a district whose communities share our same transportation, economic, governance, and natural resource interests, and we value placing the greater Flagstaff area in one single legislative district. To speak on the specifics this evening, it is our clear desire that both the congressional and legislative maps achieve pre-clearance from the Department of Justice on the initial submission of the redistricting plan. We believe this very important objective is currently met by LD7 as shown on the legislative merge map dated October 9th of 11. In addition, we ask that you, the Commission, that's really pretty cool. think I have another minute, though. In addition, we ask that the commission maintain the current rural-focused congressional map dated October 2 of 2011. And in particular, CD1, while very large and quite vast in geographical area, it is a competitive district that includes Flagstaff and many communities of interest. Regarding the legislative map, we ask that any adjustments that are made to this map will consider the incremental improvement to competitiveness, first and foremost, specifically to LD6, which includes Flagstaff. For communities of like interest, both congressional and legislative maps reflect the regional interests that are important to our city. However, we would request that the commission keep the Verde Valley together by possibly realigning Camp Verde from Legislative District 14 to Legislative District 6 with and joining Flagstaff and the greater surrounding communities. It's important to note that the business community is an integral partner with the city, and we believe that the current configuration of LD6 does keep similar business interests together. LD6, as currently drawn, will give Flagstaff a voice in state business issues that are critical to our economic vitality. Regarding our value to keep the greater Flagstaff community whole, I appreciate Supervisor Ryan's comments on behalf of the county. We have many of the community members here tonight from the surrounding neighborhoods. The legislative map has done much to keep the Flagstaff area whole and intact. However, as a city, maybe we were not as clear as we would like to have been on the rural neighborhoods that are part of our great community. In addition to those communities currently shown within the LD6 map, we would respectfully request your consideration of the inclusion of the neighborhoods slightly north of Doney Park, which are locally referenced to as Timberline, Fernwood, and the Schultz Pass fire, burn, and flood areas. Our community recognizes the importance of the Schultz fire restoration area and therefore includes it within these neighborhoods. Again, we ask that these areas be considered as inclusion to LD6. Chairperson Mathis, Commissioner McNulty, Commissioner Herrera, I commend the entire commission for all of your work on behalf of the city of Flagstaff in completing the redistricting process to this point. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and we appreciate you being here with us this evening. I personally take great pride in the tireless efforts of this community and the ownership of the values and vision we have all agreed upon. I believe it has been a sincere effort, I truly do, and has resulted in providing a clear and consistent message to you as our redistricting commission. Thank you, and enjoy your evening here.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kevin Burke, City Manager for the City of Flagstaff.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. Just a couple of housekeeping items that I might offer. Since we run a lot of meetings in here and we typically run on the 3-minute schedule that you proposed, we have a little light system that you may see down here and in front of you, and offer to your staff if they want to sit where Daryl is. You can run that. The green light runs until you're down to 1 minute. The orange light comes on at 30 seconds, and then the red light indicates when your time has expired. So it helps the folks that are sitting here to see just what time they have. The other housekeeping item that I would throw out is just the computer itself. I don't know if folks are going to want to play with maps or, call them up, or if you've got that ability to put on these screens. But we can certainly just go to your website and then put that Google map that was referenced earlier, so that if there's discussion there. So again, my name is Kevin Burke. That's K-E-V-I-N. Last name is B-U-R-K-E, and serve as the city manager for the city of Flagstaff. The purpose of my presentation was to talk about how we can achieve what both Supervisor Ryan and Councilmember Overton had described as making some adjustments to include the Schultz fire area. I believe you have a packet in front of you that gives you kind of the specifics here, and I'll start with Timberline, with the Schultz fire area. We have 3 particular census blocks that constitute these areas, and they are Block 1616, Block 668, and Block 353. Together, this population equals 2,637. We would be moving that from LD7 to LD6. So obviously, you're looking for where's the push in the bubble. The push in the bubble that we would recommend is south of Payson, And I think it's about 4 pages back, you'll see, actually it's the second to last page there. You'll see 2 census tracts, track 1710 and track 460. Combined, those 2 tracts have a population of 2,170, and we would suggest that would be the alternate. I know I'm down to 30 seconds. The other area was the request on Camp Verde, and that Camp Verde represents a population of, going back to that front page, sorry, 11,295. So moving them into LD6. Our proposal is to move the census tracts out of the Sholo area. Again, Councilmember Overton explained that we think Camp Verde has a great community of interest with the rest of the Verde Valley. Conversely, or similarly, we believe Sholo has a great community of interest with Pine Top Lakeside, and currently they're divided. Our proposal would move Sholo with the 11,277 people out of LD7, or out of LD6 into LD7. And so we think those might be the trade-offs to achieve the requests we're making tonight. With that, again, echo my thank yous. I will also communicate to the folks behind me, having attended several of your meetings and having watched, very remarkable how well that you take citizen input and really try to incorporate the changes. I know that we found the commission to be very responsive and really appreciate that aspect, and I would convey that to the rest of the group, that you've been great listeners. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joe Galley, Vice President, Government Affairs for the Flagstaff Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, and staff for the Independent Redistricting Commission. Again, Joe Galley, Vice President, Government Affairs, Flagstaff Chamber of Commerce. Last name is spelled G-A-L-L-I. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Flagstaff Chamber of Commerce and our 1,000-plus members, we welcome you to town. And we hope you stay overnight and spend some money and enjoy our fine restaurants for dinner and breakfast. You're able to get out of here early enough and catch one that's open. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the folks at the city, particularly our elected officials, our mayor and council folks that you've heard from, not just here tonight, but at your other meetings too, at different parts of the state, and the staff that have worked tirelessly. And additionally, at the county, too, as well, our elected officials who have been before you in Phoenix at many of your meetings, and then the many business leaders that have attended other.
Listen to some of the suggestions that they've made about tweaking that map a bit, the LD map 6, and do the right thing. And I know that's not always easy, and I know that this is a thankless task, but I so much appreciate your giving us the opportunity to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Martin Valentine, representing SELF from Coconino.
My name is Marty Valentine. That's V as in Victor, A-L-E-N-T-I-N-E. And I'm a longtime resident of Flagstaff. I am more than a little concerned over the redistricting as I've seen it so far, specifically in the congressional district. With all the political and economic strife today, I feel that we need to look for commonalities more than differences. Specifically, metropolitan and tribal interest should not dominate rural communities such as Flagstaff. Having spent my youth in Phoenix, later in Tucson, I assure you that this is not what my family wanted when we moved to Flagstaff 20 years ago. Urban concerns have little in common with western and northern regions and should therefore not be included in our congressional district. What I'm really interested in is specifically moving the Marana and Oro Valley southern district of the congressional division, and possibly bringing other elements, possibly north of, in the Mojave area, let's say, into the district. I appreciate your efforts. It's not an easy job. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara Valentine, representing Self from Coconino.
Good evening. I don't know about this wife following husband thing, but I will try it. My name is Barbara Valentine, Valentine. With no disrespect to the mayor of Flagstaff, the Coconino County Supervisors, the Flag 40, and the City Council, they do not reflect my views and the views of many others in the community regarding redistricting. I moved to Flagstaff 20 years ago because of its rural leanings. It is my opinion that Flagstaff should be in the Western District, not in the proposed Eastern District. According to the 2010 census, there is enough population to make 2 rural districts. I feel that we in Flag have much more in common with Yavapai, Mojave, La Paz, Northern Yuma County, and other Western Arizona communities rather than the Navajo and Apache counties as proposed in the Eastern District. Myself and many others believe that respecting communities of interest and supporting 2 genuine rural districts would ensure proper representation in Congress for business and for individuals. Please do not base your decision on voting blocks, but rules that govern the commission and common sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Martin, representing Self from Coconino.
I'm not going to spell Mike. Martin is M-A-R-T-I-N. On August 2nd, I gave this map to the administrative assistant when you weren't at the meeting. I recognize that what you're doing is a noble effort. I'll read my prepared remarks. Is Ray Blanding here? Is that you, Ray? Ladine?
He is not here tonight.
Not here, all right, fine. I mean, it's a fact. The 10-year actual enumeration specified in our Constitution is philosophically correct and an essential component of the historical anomaly represented by the form of government we all enjoy. I got to say we enjoy it. This is good. However, the revised district plans following from these renumerations historically have instead proven to be burdens to be endured. Over the course of 20-plus previous redistricting programs, the practitioners somehow managed to increase the quality of their attempts. This is historically over the United States history. The bar measuring their attempt has now risen to the level of a tripping hazard. This has provided Arizona's first redistricting commission with a perverse measure of cover. However flawed their district plan based on the 2000 census may have been, it is nothing if not traditional. The 2010 census affords the current redistricting commission and all of us, you all, an opportunity to be mutually supportive. Together we might aspire to raise the bar untraditionally higher. Such is the good faith intention of this alternate plan, which you all have had since the 2nd of August. The following 9 federal congressional districts and 30 state legislative districts were conceived shortly after the public Flagstaff City Council meeting of 7 July. The redistricting issue was the topic of discussion of the initial 2 hours of that meeting. The underlying goal of this alternate plan is functional clarity. The plan is functional by providing the critical political equity of one person, one vote. The plan achieves clarity by being understandable, if not to everyone, to as many such persons as possible. That's not the case with what you're giving us. Was the woman that had an accent French? No. From Sedona or English? English, excuse me. Bad here. Okay. Has it ever been a legitimate goal of redistricting to intentionally distract, disorient, and repulse the voting public? In the context of Arizona's governance receivership status, the question is not as incredible as it might seem. This discussion invites the current Redistricting Commission to seriously attempt to answer a single essential question. Can 39 districts somehow fairly provide critical equity in a clear form that is widely understood? This alternative suggests yes. Subordinate to the belatedly adopted standard of one man, one vote, the 39 districts are based on a single principle. The existing government-designated jurisdictions with elected legislative bodies are to be utilized whole, as their populations, per the 10th census, are less than the respective target populations. It's just that simple. The designated jurisdictions are the community of interest that this alternative will recognize, respect, and maintain, which none of your plans state. You do not state what is the community of interest per each. You can, and you should, and you have not. In most locations, the jurisdictions will be state-designated counties, municipalities, and school districts. In the few remaining locations, the jurisdictions will be federally designated Native American reservations. I have not been as systematic with those as I'd like to, and I apologize to the Native American community for that, to that effect. The target populations are given. It's math. As presented in the following tabulations, actual specific populations of the alternate districts reflect their several circumstances will vary. In each case, the difference will be presented as a percentage. You've all done that. It will remain for the dedicated staff to determine the political party distributions of the voters in this alternate district. Such distributions are based on self-declaration by individuals during their voter registration process. As the numbers of As the numbers of registered voters by party or declared independents are obtained, they should continue to be listed per district, all alternate plans. You're doing that. That's not bad. In a similar vein, a more rational analysis of alternate plans may become the norm when all of the presumably several communities of interest in all of the alternate plans are listed per each. Further, the degree to which these communities are maintained whole or fractured can also be listed and become part of the norm. You just heard the story about Sedona having its voting precincts being divided by your work. That may be a fine-tuning that you can edit, so to speak. Recognizing Arizona's political receivership status requires that the obvious be stated. The federal and state designated jurisdictions are explicitly and objectively defined communities of interest. Again, the redistricting process will not be less equitable if all of the alternate plans are also obliged to be systematically explicit. Okay. This is no more than consistent because my plan does that. The alternate plan is, after all, a draft. Consequently, the use of intra-county divisions and reservations is intended to represent benchmark goals within the overall census figures. The alternate attempts to impartially presume that all women, men are created equal. Respectively, all Arizonans are invited to speak for themselves in good faith. I'd just like to highlight a couple of very nice, obvious things. Talking about CDs, people that have a lot of problems with our proposed congressional district running down the east side of the state. If you take the 5 northern counties, you'll end up with a population of 724,607. That's Mojave, Yavapai Whole, Coconino, Navajo, and Apache. That's 2% over the limit. I think on a congressional district, that might be too much of an error that the feds will accommodate. If we delete and this reflects positively on the Apaches, if we delete the Apache reservation areas in southern portions of Navajo and Apache County, that may help that. By the way, this gives you 3 rural districts. You seem to be struggling so hard to have that problem. Okay.
Hey, Madam Chair, we need to respect the 3-minute timeline, and...
Is it over?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think we need to bring back the buzzer. I mean, I think it'll be helpful. The buzzer.
Sir, if you could ensure, though, that we get that map, Christina Gomez, our Deputy Executive Director, will take that from you, and any prepared statements that you've got written out that you want to give us.
Where is she?
She is standing, she just waved. Thank you. I'm going to check on Mr. Herder. You're, okay. Take a break. Okay, we'll take a quick recess, 5 minutes. It's right now 8:02 p.m. Thank you. The time is 8:17 p.m. and we've got a lot of folks who want to get home tonight because they have long drives, so we're trying to be respectful of that, and we'll get started. Before we take more public comment, I wanted to note that someone, thankfully to us, pointed out some discrepancies in some data that went out tonight, and we are doing some checking on that. It's on these charts that say Commission-approved congressional draft map voting age population breakdown. So our mapping consultant is looking into those numbers and making sure that they are accurate, and we'll ensure that the right numbers are on our website as soon as possible. So with that, our first speaker is Dia Bragsala? Brascala, sorry. Thank you. From Yavapai County.
My name is Dia, D-E-A, last name B-R-A-S-G-A-L-L-A. And my concern is about the outlying districts surrounding Sedona. They are put into a different legislative district, I believe. And they're only they're maybe 2 or 3 miles outside of Sedona, and I don't understand why they were not included. One is the Shadows community, and the other one is the lower Loop Road that has the state park, the Arizona State, one of our state parks there. Anyway, I really feel also that the village of Oak Creek needs to be included with Sedona on all of the maps because they share the same fire and school districts as well as a zip code. And the village of Oak Creek is like maybe 5 miles from the city limits of Sedona. Anyway, I also wanted to say that I had lived for 14 years on the Hopi Reservation, and I'm very proud to see that the Hopi and the Navajo reservations are included in CD1, and I'm glad that Sedona is included in CD1. And I thank you very, very much for all your hard work, and I certainly wouldn't want to be sitting where you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marion McAllister, representing Self from Coconino County.
For coming up here and for all of your hard work. We really appreciate it. I just want to say, first of all, I really do like all of the maps that you've done, especially the CD1 map. It fits what I would like to see. I live in the Schultz Fire Burn area, and last year I was evacuated. And should have been evacuated by the fire, and then I suffered flood damage. And as Mr. Off said, Flagstaff will never be the same. It will not recover in our lifetime. I went to all the community-wide events that were held, especially by the Board of Supervisors, all of the different agencies around the area. I live in LD2, and both of my representatives and my state senator are from Prescott. And I have never seen them up here. I can't even remember their names. I have to keep looking them up. As far as I know, they've never even visited Flagstaff. So I just want to go on record as saying I really do hope that you keep us with communities of interest in the East Rural District. Thank you very much.
Ma'am,
Thank you.
Spell your name?
Oh,
Ma'am?
do you mind spelling your name for the record? Thank you.
McAllister, M-C-C-O-L-L-I-S-T-E-R.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brian Bates, representing Self. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Lula Stago, representing Stago. Thank you. From Navajo County.
First of all, I want to thank the commission for your hard work. I am a product of NAU. It was mentioned. I did my bachelor work here, master's, and doctoral work in Flagstaff, and NAU has been pretty good with me, so thank you. Anyway, I am Lula Stago. I'm a tribal member of the Navajo tribe, a community member of Tisto, 50 miles north of Winslow. I also reside and have a home in Winslow since 1982. I vote in the city election of Winslow, the state, the federal, and also the Navajo tribal election. I want to briefly mention where I'm coming from and why I am really thankful for what you, with the two maps that you have designed. We have a cultural background and a traditional history that goes years back. And we have our culture, which is ethnically unique. We have cultural preference and have a customarily and are customarily different. And because of this, we are often misunderstood. And in fact, we have our people have suffered, the Native American people have suffered historic injustice from forced colonization and dispositions of land and resources. And it has been very, very difficult. And this is why I'm looking at the two maps. I want to thank you for what you have done, the way that you designed the maps, because it shows that you have considered the situation that we're in, and that you designed the maps in accordance to our needs and our interests. It will give us an opportunity to determine our political status. It will also help us to pursue our own economic, social, educational, political, and cultural development. I want to thank you again for the work that you have done. And I also want to bring up just a little activity that we're doing in Winslow. Since I've been there for many years, that we have a group that started about a year ago. And you see we have Navajo lands within the city and also surrounding the northern part of the city that belongs to the Navajo tribe. And we are looking at these lands to develop them so that we can become economically sufficient, and so that we can work to rebuild what we have lost in the past. And so looking at the two maps really illustrates that you're giving us that opportunity, and we thank you for that. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dorothy O'Brien, representing Big Park Council from Yavapai County.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dorothy O'Brien, capital O apostrophe capital B R-I-E-N. And it's my great pleasure and privilege to be here for Big Park Regional Coordinating Council. We are the regional council over the unincorporated part of Sedona. So we're here. You've heard lots of conversation tonight about the greater Sedona area, and I'm here to speak to you. One of the reasons I wanted the map up is to just show you, this doesn't represent it properly, but the point is there is a jut, for lack of a better word, I don't know how to describe it. But what you've done is you've left out all the unincorporated parts of Sedona. We very much, as a greater Sedona community, want to be linked with CD1. We are well pleased with your work on this map. We have a historic link with the communities of Flagstaff. Historically, we've been linked with them. When you think about our economic development, our economic drivers, they go in this direction. We have almost more than 3 million visitors a year. They come in through the gateways into the greater Sedona area, and then they either come up here through Flag to go to the Grand Canyon, or culturally, we're very linked to the nations, to the Native American, to the tribes, the Navajo, the Hopi lands. Many people come through our community, the greater Sedona area, to move it towards the Flagstaff area for the rest of their visits or business or vacations, whatever. So it's critically important to us that we be, number one, combined as the greater Sedona area. You heard we have zip codes in common. I live in Sedona, that's my zip code, even though I'm in the unincorporated part. We have schools, we have libraries, we have fire districts. So, you know, yes, we are in Yavapai County, but our lives are centered around Sedona, and more common interest would be for us, east and north. So we understand that there are issues in Pinal County and some of these other population centers that perhaps could be adjusted, and we would ask you to do that. What I'm going to do is just take a few minutes and go through my comments, because I'm standing here for approximately 7,000 people. And then if you bring in the rest of the unincorporated areas like Red Rock Loop Road and Dry Creek areas all around the city of Sedona, you come up to about 8,000 people. So not that I'm representing all of them, but the Big Park Planning District is almost 7,000 people. So what I'd like you to know from them is that we consider the Flagstaff area part of our economic driver. Our economic development is intrinsically linked to the way people travel through to see the Red Rocks, and then to do things like visit the cultural sites on the nation and in Hopi lands, as well as Grand Canyon. So that's huge for us. We're surrounded by Coconino Forest, by Coconino National Forest. We're hoping that at some point we'll be a national scenic area, and that will be a huge economic driver for the whole region north and east. And I will say, lastly, on the congressional district, and then I want to take a brief moment on the legislative district. We need, we need more equal representation. We have not been well served. We have many good people in elected office, no doubt. No, and I don't want to criticize anyone that way. But our voice gets lost. There's some political machinery in places, and we are a community that's our voice gets lost. We're a huge economic driver to the whole of Yavapai County. Greater Sedona area, yes, we are. But we don't reap the benefit of that. Our voice is not heard or listened to. So that's a big consideration for us when we look at who can we bring to the legislature to be elected and represent us and hear us and understand our issues. The natural resources are huge for us. Water, timber, the environment. And we're very closely linked with what Flagstaff is trying to accomplish. So that's one thing. Legislatively, you will hear more from our community. So forgive me for not having serious detail, other than to say, when we as a community look at the next 10 years, which you're doing, God help you, you're doing it, and we appreciate that. But when we look at the next 10 years, we've got to improve on the past 10 years, because the way the maps are drawn now, we don't have a voice. When you push us towards the west, we get swallowed up and we're completely ineffective. So we would like to see with the legislative districts, if the greater Sedona area can be cohesively kept together, super. That is our primary goal. Secondary goal would be the rest of the Verde Valley. At least parts that are maybe contiguous or close to Sedona, if not the whole. But we would prefer the whole Verde Valley be a part of some of the legislative districts that would not necessarily put us under the thumb, and I'm going to say the word, of Prescott. But that's the truth. I mean, we don't have the political machinery to work in that environment. We don't. So subsequently, our voices are not heard. So for equal representation, we would prefer as a community to be moved a little bit further east. So there you go. Thank you so much, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
We'll have more to you.
Is Stu keeping time for us, Mr.?
We're using the,
Oh, the system? Great, okay. I can't see it because of the name tag, so I wasn't sure if the lights were going. Okay. Our next speaker is Greg Dalder, President, Blackbill Park Neighborhood Association from Coconino County.
Good evening. As you said, my name's Greg Dalder. Last name is D-A-L-D-E-R. And I'm the president of Blackbill Park Neighborhood Association. My comments have to do with the legislative districts, and I live in Timberline. On June 20th, 2010, the Schultz fire started. And in the course of just several short days, 15,000 acres were burned. Many of us were evacuated from our home during that time briefly. About 30 days later, the first of many devastating floods came to our community. In that first flood, a young girl lost her life. On that day, we became a community of interest. And it was born from that shared experience and our common needs as a community that the Blackbill Park Neighborhood Association was formed, a grassroots effort with the goal of protecting and preserving and restoring our community. Sadly, about a month ago, we had this time a young boy that died in our community, run over by heavy equipment that was attempting to build a berm to protect a home from flooding. There's been a lot of damage to homes and property, nothing compared to the loss of life. It's been a tough year and a half for me and many of my friends that are here in the room tonight. You can only imagine how we felt when we saw that Timberline and Fernwood and other communities that have been affected by the continuing floods were not included in Legislative District 6, along with other flood-affected communities and the city of Flagstaff. It was sort of like enough already. I mean, we're tough, resilient people, but it was another blow. Now, the most generous explanation for that, to not be included, to have our community of interest divided, was that there was an oversight, maybe an error. But your presence tonight and your deep listening says to me that you're here because you are committed, in fact have a responsibility to correct an oversight like this one, indeed I think an error in the way the boundaries of Legislative District 6 were drawn. And so I'm here to ask you to redraw those boundaries so that the flood-affected communities are included in Legislative District 6, along with some of the other flood-affected communities, and also along with the city of Flagstaff. And then lastly, I would like to just say for the record, I'd like to express my gratitude to Supervisor Ryan for his support of our community, Councilperson Overton, Mr. Burke, City Manager, and many, many, many of you that are still here and those that have already left that have been here and have given their time to say that they support this change and are advocating for our community of interest. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sally Kladnick, representing Self from Flagstaff.
Thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. It's Sally with an I-E, and Kladnick is K-L-A-D-N-I-K. I've lived in Flagstaff for 8.5 years. It's a wonderful community, and it is a greater community. So I, too, support including the Schultz Fire Area, Timberline, and Fernwood in our greater Flagstaff community. I think if it wasn't an oversight, it was an error and really should be looked at. My understanding from the August 3rd meeting and the various meetings that have occurred here in Flagstaff at the City Council is that communities of interest are one of the criteria for drawing these lines, and I know you have a lot of criteria and you've had a huge amount of input from all over the state, and I do applaud all the work you've done. In general, I feel very fairly represented by these new districts. By the congressional district, I feel it is very fair and that you've tried to listen to input and have done extremely well, so I'm very pleased. I feel as if I might be in a democracy again, which is a nice feeling. And with the legislative districts, I think there are a few areas that that could be looked at and tweaked, and probably in the congressional district too, when I hear about the Verde Valley and about Camp Verde and the village of Oak Creek and some of the surrounding greater Sedona areas. However, I don't know how much that means of pulling the thread in the sweater, as someone said earlier, David McKell. And I also was a little surprised to see that Belmont was split. Belmont is split. The residential part has been excluded, even though Parks and the commercial part was included in LD 6. So that seems to me somebody should look at Belmont and why the residents who all work in Flag and are a part of Flag were excluded from LD 6. So I know there's going to be lots of input for the rest of the month. I appreciate your time, your patience, and your commitment to this very awesome task. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Allison Zelms, Assistant City Manager for the City of Sedona.
Chairwoman Mathis and Commissioners, thank you for spending your evening with us tonight. My name is Allison Zelms, last name Z like zebra, E-L-M-S. I am here on behalf of the Sedona City Council. They send their apologies that they couldn't be here tonight, but they are providing the Sedona Spirit Awards this evening. I'm here to thank you for your work on the maps that you have proposed and generally support the legislative map. Sedona appreciates being located in District 6 with our regional partners, the Village of Oak Creek and surrounding Sedona areas, as well as the Verde Valley, although we would echo the request to include Camp Verde within Legislative District 6 to keep the Verde Valley whole. However, we do have great concerns about being displaced from our regional partners within Congressional District 1 in the proposed map. As was stated by several people this evening, we are a community at large, although we are in our corporate city limits much smaller than the greater Sedona area. If you were to be able to change the map to include the voting precincts for both the fire district and the school district, you would basically be incorporating the areas that were discussed this evening. We do share schools and fire districts and all of those things, and we really share a community identity that most of our visitors don't realize the difference between the corporate city limits of the city of Sedona and our regional partners in the village of Oak Creek. So there's 2 to 4 million people who won't know that you know, they're in a different represented area because they don't see it as a different area. We share Chamber of Commerce, as was mentioned, and we really share commerce with each other, as was represented by the Sedona Hilton, which is not in the city of Sedona, but is representative of our local area. In addition, we really would like to see the Greater Verde Valley included within the same congressional district, although that will be pulling the string sweater. As was discussed earlier, we do feel like this is a very important change to make, having these maps be our future for the next 10 years, and we would like to respectfully request that you observe our 2 primary goals, the first being to be included with the village of Oak Creek and the surrounding Sedona areas, and the second being included with the Verde Valley in a congressional district. Thank you for your time, and you will be hearing from the rest of the City Council at future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is J.R. Murray, Chairman, Flagstaff 40.
Thank you. Again, it's J.R. Murray, M-U-R-R-A-Y, and I am the chairman of Flagstaff 40. And I'll just mention that Flagstaff 40 is a nonpartisan organization comprised of CEOs and executives of the largest employers and organizations here in Flagstaff, greater Flagstaff area. And we certainly, our membership represents a very wide range of viewpoints. Chairman Mathis and fellow commissioners, welcome to Flagstaff. I'm the 40th one to welcome you, but I mean it sincerely. And thank you for holding this public meeting here during the 30-day public comment period. I also would like to thank you for your dedicated service to the state of Arizona by volunteering for this commission. You will hear many opinions on the final maps that you have adopted, and for many reasons. Speaking on behalf of Flagstaff 40, we are satisfied that you took our testimony and our values to bear on both the congressional and legislative maps. Flagstaff 40 has been engaged with this commission from the very first round of meetings. We have attended or monitored over 15 meetings, and we have supplied written comments and letters for the record by many of our members who were unable to travel 5 or more hours round trip for 3 minutes of speaking. I trust that those comments have been included in the record and that you and your staff have digested and validated our input. I'd like to reiterate our original and our current objectives and values, so you remember them as you contemplate making changes to the maps. We desire competitive districts. We wish that Flagstaff be placed with nearby communities of interest, and we also intend for you to keep greater Flagstaff whole. Flagstaff 40 does not support making any major overhaul to the rural districts you have adopted. If you do find the need to tweak either the congressional or the legislative adopted maps, and we acknowledge right from the beginning that they are not perfect, then we would note the competitiveness in the existing maps, which for CD1 is 9% in favor of Democrats, and legislative District 6, I believe, is 7% in favor of the Republicans. And any tweaks could only improve that competitiveness. As you hear from citizens and organizations around the state, I encourage you to focus on minor tweaking and not make major changes that will require us to follow you around the state from meeting to meeting. Some areas may certainly have legitimate concerns. However, I'd like to repeat that even though the maps we have reviewed and you have adopted are not perfect, we certainly believe that our voices have been heard and we can move forward for the next 10 years with the adopted maps. As you know, Flagstaff has a very unique economic development platform based on high-tech and leading-edge technologies. Flagstaff is the center of government for Northern Arizona, Finnish, and of course home to NAU, many transportation issues in common with our communities of interest. Our main objective at the beginning was to become familiar with the process, find common ground within our communities of interest, and engage in the process. I'm very pleased, and we are very pleased, that Flagstaff has turned out in the first round and here tonight. And I think our community and the folks that traveled from the south and north and east and west that are here with us should be commended. We live in a very challenging time. Real leadership is required to develop good strategies in a collaborative environment to rescue the economy. That process begins with district mapping. We certainly would be willing to help in any way. We will be keenly interested in any moves you make as a result of the public comments. But for now, today, Flagstaff is content that the maps are generally reflective of our objectives. Thank you again, and I would like to acknowledge the many community partnerships that we have worked with and the many people here that are engaged in this process. That's where it all starts, with that one vote, one person, and we just look forward to the districting process, good people to run for office, good people with smart ideas making tough decisions to help our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sophia Katz, representing Self from Flagstaff.
Hi, my name is Sophia, S-O-P-H-I-A, Katz, K-A-T-Z. And I would like to talk about map, and mostly, first I would like to think that these maps arrived. It's more easy to talk. And I would like to talk about this Congress legislature map, because Arizona is a unique state. We have Indian population, Navajo, and Hopi nations. And this is unique culture. They have their own tradition, their history, and their way of life. And to clip them artificially to area of very different people will never represent their needs. So this Congress map doesn't reflect that we have such unique population in Arizona. And maybe it's not easy question to decide. I don't think we have to look at on population density in this area, because it's very unique situation, more like representative of minority. So this is about this map. About this map, I am glad that they have ability to represent themselves in legislature, but a little bit nervous borders on the north of Flagstaff. I think Timberline, it's like suburb of Flagstaff, and to exclude it's artificially, and it will be more smooth border in this area. This is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alvin Thompson, representing Winslow Dene from Winslow.
Good evening. My name is Alvin Thompson. I'm from Winslow, and my last name is Thompson, T-H-O-M-P-S-O-N. Some folks leave out the H, so maybe I thought that may help. I am from Winslow, and I've pretty much, you may say I'm a product of the Winslow education system because I grew up not far from there, perhaps about 50 miles north of Flagstaff, and I went to school up there on the res for up to about 3rd grade, and then from there I went straight to Winslow school system, and I finished there through high school, and ever since I've left Winslow, well, I didn't totally leave perhaps, but I did leave for a time, then came back to it, and so I'm pretty much there now, and I've observed its growth or lack of growth is kind of my concern in Winslow area. Since I've left it, since I graduated from Winslow back in '74, and now I've been observing it, and there hasn't been that much growth economically that I've seen, albeit we've had a few stores, mainly Walmart is our biggest store that's been added, that we have that's of any big significance I see. But other than that, with that in mind, I've had a little bit of renewed interest in what's been holding back Winslow as far as its growth and the like. So I'm pretty much thankful that Winslow has been included in the way that's been drawn with the legislative district map, and then with the congressional also being it where they are. Winslow comes out pretty much a special city where it's influenced a lot by the neighboring tribes that come into Winslow and shop there. They go to school there. Their kids go to school there. Their grandkids go to school there, and there's a pretty long history of people coming to Winslow and availing themselves of the education and economic interests that they have there. And so it's pretty nice to know that that we're included in a place where the influence it gets from the reservations is being recognized, and so to put Winslow within that, so that it could be developed according to the way people want a city developed. So I'm pretty thankful about that. And so I just wanted to say that, and thanks for all your hard work you guys do, and we hope we can be a good economic center sooner or later back in Winslow. And so thanks a lot again.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joan McClelland, representing Self. And if you could tell us where you're from, that'd be great.
My name is Joan McClelland, McClelland. The first C is a little c, then you got capital C. And I live in Sedona, but I live in the part of Sedona that has the name of the village of Oak Creek. And some of us also call it Big Park, but we're all Sedona. And I work as a volunteer at the Visitor Center for the Coconino Forest, which is the gateway to Sedona. It's just before you see the sign, Village of Oak Creek. There really isn't any Village of Oak Creek. We have we're an unincorporated community, and we have a body that speaks for us to the legislature or to the county called the Big Park Council. I think Dorothy O'Brien already said she's representing them. And my only thought is, please do not separate the village of Oak Creek from the city of Sedona. We are all the same thing. We are the gateway to the Red Rock country. When people come to the visitor center, and we can have more than 1,000 people a day come through there, and we're all Sedona. I mean, I left with your lady in the back for each of the 5 commissioners a little thing to remind you. It's a picture of Cathedral Rock, which is probably the most photographed picture in the United States. That's in Big Park. That's why we are Sedona. We are, the Bell Rock. I'm sure you're all familiar with Bell Rock. I think you've all been to Sedona. Bell Rock is in Big Park area. It's in our planning area. So we are Sedona. So please keep us with the city of Sedona. And I'm personally very pleased to be in Congressional District 1 with with Flagstaff because we are, when you come up the I-17 corridor, you're going through the Verde Valley community of like Camp Verde and Rimrock and whatnot. We're all together. We're all, it's very important. It's an economic driver. A lot of people have said this, but it's very, very true that we have to hang together because we are together. Please don't separate us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. David Johns, representing Dine Hatali Association.
Yat eto ke Ashched and then Schlekia Ani Bashes Chin, Twatsonit Nedash Chi, Hanaganit Nedash Nulla. My name is Dr. David Johns. Johns spelled Johns, and I am self-employed artist. I received my formal education from Northern Arizona University. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in painting and printmaking. And I was awarded honorary doctorate degree in humane letters in 1996. And I was born in Winslow, Arizona, and raised in Sabadagay, Arizona, on the Navajo Nation. And I'm here on behalf of the medicine people of the Nez Nation. I'm a vice president of the Natahati Association Incorporated, and I'm an herbalist. I am a citizen of Navajo Nation in Arizona. I'm a voter of Arizona in the Navajo County. I came here to talk a little about the San Francisco Peak as a sacred site. One of the critical issues to the Navajo people is protecting sacred sites and around the Navajo Nation. We as a Navajo people, as well as other indigenous nation or caretaker of this land, we speak on behalf of what we hold sacred: our land, our animals, water, air, the insects, the four-legged, and the winged. San Francisco Peaks is one of the sacred mountains. Cisna sits to the east. It sits just east of Alamosa, Colorado. To the south sits Sotzil, and it's located at Grants, New Mexico. To the west is Dokoosleet, north of Flagstaff. The Bensa sits north. It sits west of Durango, Colorado. And then there's two doorways, and then Chol. The San Francisco Peak, Zitloko is our mother. Our way of life is linked, tied, and embedded to Zitloko. Our ceremonies, songs, language, and spirituality are embedded in our creation, our emergent stories that is our path for life, and our way of being. Who better to advocate for the protection of sacred sites? An indigenous person can better represent and advocate for indigenous concerns such as protecting the sacred sites. Protection of sacred site is not a 10-year issue like redistricting. We as indigenous nation have been here since time began, and we do not intend to move anywhere because we are home. We are home within 4 sacred mountains. Man-made laws come and go, whereas the natural laws are stationary. Protecting sacred sites crosses multi-generation, crossing mammalian. We must abide and continue to respect the natural laws as directed and practiced by our grandfathers and grandmothers before us. In conclusion, I support the congressional and legislative draft map It is important to have the San Francisco piece within the LD7 as proposed, especially the legislative map. You, as the Redistricting Commission, are protecting the voting rights of the Navajo voters in LD7. I want to thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Dugan, representing Self and Flagstaff Tea Party. Okay. Adam Fox, representing Self from Flagstaff. I think this says Brent Thorley from Fountain Hills.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brent Thorley, last name Thorley. And I'm from Fountain Hills, Arizona. Happen to be in this beautiful area of northern Arizona this week, and we decided to attend this meeting. Fountain Hills, as some people may have seen, we are now being proposed as part of Congressional District 4. And that kind of brings up a large concern for those in Fountain Hills. We feel like we're part of the community of Scottsdale, Tempe, Mesa, that area, and we'd like to be re-included in that for the election process. As I've been talking with some of the people here tonight too, one of the concerns I have also with Congressional District 1 is down at Pinal County. I'm looking at that stretch between Phoenix and Tucson. It's probably going to have the absolute greatest growth in the whole state in the next 10 years. That area of growth is probably going to dwarf the votes of northern Arizona in this Congressional District 1. So it's just one of the side thoughts I had. But in general, it's just my major concern is keeping Fountain Hills as part of the Scottsdale, Tempe, Mesa area as far as the congressional district. And I'd like to kind of see the, congressional districts 1, 4, and 3 kind of almost unwound around, because right now they're kind of almost wound around Phoenix in a way. I know it's a lot of work, but it just seems like the distances are very great right now for those 3 districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gail Eckert, representing Self from Flagstaff. Not here. How about Maud Gosar, representing Families in Coconino?
Madam Chair, that's Congressman Gosar's wife, and her child sent her a message and she had to leave, but she just wanted to thank you for being here today on behalf of the congressman. He couldn't be here, but just to greet you and welcome you to Flagstaff, she had to go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next speaker is Rich Hull, representing Self from Coconino. How about Julia Curavan, representing Self from Coconino? And I'm still here. Right.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Julia, Julia Currivan, Currivan. I am a resident of Timberline. I work in Flagstaff. My social and material support comes from Flagstaff. I concur with and support everything my neighbors have said in terms of us not being excluded from our community, which is Flagstaff, and request very strongly that we be included in Legislative District 6. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sally Terrell from Flagstaff.
Good evening. My name is Sally Terrell, Tyrrell. I've been in Flagstaff since the early 70s, and I thought I was coming to the warm desert. Thank you for all your hard work and for listening to us here. Your congressional map reflects our wishes, particularly that Coconino County be kept whole and placed in a greater eastern Arizona district. Regarding your legislative map, we want our district to be competitive and think your map is basically right in this regard, but believe that you can make minor boundary adjustments to make things more competitive. I don't have specific suggestions, but in the light of what you've accomplished so far, I'm sure you can do that too. Again, thank you so much for your time and your effort and your service to Arizona and to our community, and congratulations on your good work.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Doug Bullard, representing Self from Coconino.
Hi, thank you. It's Doug Ballard.
Ballard.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. You've gone through an awful lot of names this evening. B-A-L-L-A-R-D. First and foremost, and to echo the vast majority of people here today, thank you so much. What maybe not everyone is aware of is that you commissioners in particular, thank you staff certainly also, but you commissioners are citizen volunteers, giving up your own time for the betterment of the state in what sometimes has been a thankless task. And Chairman Mathis, I want to thank you in particular, and the other, all of the other commissioners for everything you've done. Just to keep my comments kind of brief, very, very pleased with the work that you've done on CD1, Congressional District 1, keeping us Greater Flagstaff whole and in an eastern congressional district that's competitive. I think the vast majority of people that testified at the last hearing testified along those lines. A lot of written comments that came forward along those lines, and we really thank you very much for listening to us. That was great. I do want to echo some comments, though, about Greater Sedona and the village of Oak Creek. If there's any way to tweak that map a little bit to include those two together, they are really pretty much joined at the hip, and it would be great if you could find a way to include the village of Oak Creek within CD1 as well. On the LD front, I think you've also done a commendable job, not making perhaps everybody happy. We'd like to see it maybe, I'd like to see it a little bit more competitive. The one area I would suggest you look at and try to tweak a little bit is to try to include the Verde Valley as a whole in that legislative district. And also I would echo the comments that had been made previously about the Schultz Fire area. Certainly dividing that area up creates some difficulty, and it's a strong community out there. They identify very strongly with Flagstaff, and I would urge you to continue or to look at including that area as well. And thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sandra Cosentino from Yavapai County.
My name is Sandra Cosentino, C-O-S-E-N-T-I-N-O. And again, I thank you for the hard work. Overall, I'm really happy with what you've done here. I live in Sedona, a 21-year business operator down there, and I can assure you that we are directly related to Flagstaff and the Colorado Plateau, and we love being in CD1. And like the other Sedona people, we really want to see Sedona Shadows, Lower Red Rock Loop, VOC, Village of Oak Creek go with us into CD1. And I wonder if there's any way to tweak it to have more of the Verde Valley and less of Pinal County in CD1, it's important to keep it rural and to keep that good representation, that fair representation. So we thank you for the good work on that. And even from the ecosystem standpoint, we're right underneath the edge of the Colorado Plateau. It wraps around the north and eastern sides of the Verde Valley. Our watershed, our economics, our tourism business, everything relates to Flagstaff, the Grand Canyon, and the native cultures. And we're really happy to be part of the district with the Navajo and Hopi people. They're part of our life, our culture in Sedona, and the business in Sedona as well. And Legislative 6 is a really good community of interest. You basically got the Mogollon Rim and those just above and below it in a cohesive group. If you can at all possible, bring in Camp Verde, so we have the whole Verde Valley together, along with Flagstaff, that would be just amazing. And I can tell you, we absolutely don't want to follow Yavapai County lines. We do not want to be tied to Prescott. All of our representatives now in the Arizona legislature come from Prescott, and as Angela said earlier, they took 4 of the 5 county supervisor seats in a total undemocratic process. We have no voice, so we really do not want to be part of the western areas. We support the way you've done this with the eastern communities, that ecologically and economically, that we're all tied together. And thank you so much for the good work here.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Mitchell, Sedona Tea Party President.
Hi, my name is John Mitchell, M-I-T-C-H-E-L-L. First of all, when I look at your schedule, I want to thank you for your hard work, because I know of where I speak because I've been in your position to one degree or another in the past, and it's daunting at best. And I look at your schedule, and y'all are showing great grace and perseverance in doing what you're doing. I mean, I'm grateful that you are keeping with a schedule such as this and hearing us out. I just have a couple of comments, actually, that I think are pertinent. I thought about actually yielding my time, but there was a couple of questions that weren't addressed, and one of them is this. When I look at the map, I'm a little bit perplexed, actually, and I'm wondering, how is it that the new proposed congressional map is considered to be compact or practicable when it encompasses nearly 1/2 of the state, making it, in my opinion, it makes it almost impossible to travel and to encompass for the representative. CD1, it appears, will be dominated by people who aren't rural at all. And the second point or question I wanted to make, it's my understanding that Tom Horn has filed a suit against this map in regards to possible violations of open meetings law, and in combination with the decision on this mapping district, with the support of the sitting governor. Now I find myself wondering, why would that be if this decision was fair and in compliance with Proposition 106 and the Voting Rights Act? Again, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Clifford Alexander III, representing Self. Okay. How about Jay Parkinson, representing Self from Yavapai?
Good evening. My name is Jay Parkinson, P-A-R-K-I-S-O-N, and I'm here representing myself to express my displeasure at the proposed map. My choice would be that Yavapai County remain intact, that the Verde Valley not be carved out. We have an extensive history as a county. The Verde Valley has been a part of this since 1891, I believe. So this is not an overnight relationship. You know, we have a historical, cultural relationship as a county, as well as water issues out of the Big Chino wash area. The folks that are worried about splitting up Sedona and Big Park, well, that's an easy fix. Leave them in the Verde Valley and part of Yavapai County. We're large enough and meet the threshold for legislative and congressional districts, and we'd ask you to consider that history and keep us intact. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brandon Kavanaugh from Flagstaff 40.
Hello, my name is Brandon Kavanaugh, B-R-A-N-D-O-N, last name K-A-V-A-N-A-G-H. I am here on behalf of Flagstaff 40, and this is the second time I've had the chance to appear in front of you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I feel I have a special relationship with you, as I think I'm probably the only one on the official record being wished to get some sleep, as I showed up for the last hearing within 10 days of my son being born, and he is now 5 weeks old. And so I'm here to speak with you and then run home and severely apologize to my wife for still being here. But with that in mind, I would definitely like to thank you and support your hard work. Definitely, I think you have suffered more than the sleep deprivation that I've suffered. But the work that you have produced is something that Flagstaff 40 is proud to support. It's something that you have listened to our concerns, to our core issues, to our questions about communities of interest, to our questions about the I-17, I-40 business corridors. We appreciate that in your mapping of Congressional District Number 1. We also appreciate the fact that we are a nonpartisan group and that we certainly present to you, as we were thanked for doing, our clear bias. We have an agenda, and we are here to present it to you, and we appreciate that the maps that you have produced meet with what our goals have been. And I applaud everybody else that has stood up tonight, because everybody that has stood up tonight should be applauded for voicing their opinion, whether it's in agreement with what I'm here to say or whether if it's completely contrary to what I want to say. Because everybody needs to stand up here and have their voice be heard, and I certainly support that. What that does lead to is actually the comment, if you remember from before, I am a registered independent, and that is why I appreciate the competitiveness of the districts that are being formed. I like the way that the maps are drawn, both the congressional and both the legislative district maps that you have done. I certainly appreciate that, and any tweaks that can be made that make that more competitive, I certainly appreciate as a registered independent. Now, I would also say that we are the Flagstaff 40. We are business owners and executives, as JR explained to you. We represent the business interests in Greater Flagstaff, and that is certainly why we also support the comments tonight of the Schultz Pass Fire neighborhoods, because they are our Greater Flagstaff members. They are our employees, they are our friends, they are our business associates, they are a part of Greater Flagstaff. I mean, there really is no other way to say that, and so we certainly support that, and that's why we say that we support the general overall view of the map, but that we certainly support the small tweaks that are needed to make the differences that fit with the comments that you've heard here tonight. And so for all of that, we definitely appreciate your work, we appreciate your perseverance, and we hope that we can reach a map that everybody is equally unhappy with, to be perfectly honest, because you will never make everyone happy. So we appreciate your work, and we appreciate seeing the maps that you have produced after all of the comments that you have heard, as JR said, as we have followed you around the state harassing you. So thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ron Lee, representing Self from Navajo.
Yate, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ron Lee, and that last name is difficultly spelled L-E-E. On behalf of my relatives, and who are they? Well, as I've shared with you before, I have 4 main clans that expands, and that expands exponentially, which makes me a significant relative to my people, the Net people living on the Navajo Nation. So on behalf of my thousands of relatives, I would like to go on record to make a few points with respect to communities of interest and competitiveness within the congressional district draft map. Tonight, I would like to remind you that as a young boy, I started school here in Flagstaff in the 1960s, while my father, uncles, and grandfathers lived and worked at what used to be called the Navajo Army Depot in Belmont. I also remember as a young boy the exodus of my Navajo people coming off the reservation to attend the Flagstaff Indian powwow during the 4th of July. Today, many of our people still live in and around the Flagstaff community while either contributing to the labor force here or while attending one of the K-12 education system, and others attending NAU or Coconino Community College. I, for one, received my master's of public administration from NAU. Go Lumberjacks. So having said that, many studies have showed over the years that for every $1 wage earned on the Navajo reservation, 71 cents of that dollar is spent off the reservation. And I would suspect that much of that dollar is spent here in Flagstaff and other border towns. Today, if I want to see my relatives, all I have to do is go to Walmart. And if I don't see my relatives there, I'll see the rest of them at the other Walmart. While you may hear from the business communities in support or not in support of the current congressional draft map, it is our strong belief that we have greatly contributed to the Flagstaff economy since probably its incorporation, and will continue to do so in the future, into the distant future. And it is a given that Flagstaff needs the Navajo commerce. And it is this economic interdependency that Flagstaff and its surrounding communities such as Sedona and the Navajo Nation is a community of interest. As for competitiveness, I have been hearing that there are some out there that are arguing that voter registration is a better indicator of competitiveness than voter performance. History and data has shown us that voter turnout on the Navajo reservation falls somewhere between 15 and 20% below the statewide average. For example, in the 2008 presidential election, Arizona statewide turnout was 72%, while turnout on the Navajo Nation was 54%. The turnout during the midterm election is even much lower on the Navajo Nation. And it's that lower voter turnout is something that we have in common among tribal communities for various reasons. One, isolation, remoteness, and a lack of telecommunications and so forth. Therefore, I ask that you take into consideration voter turnout in tribal communities when determining competitiveness. And on behalf of all my relations, we support the current congressional draft map. And we ask that you keep up the good work. Ahiaha, good evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker, and just to note, this is the last of the yellow forms. There's so many people here tonight that we had to make copies, and we'll be moving to the white forms. But Lauren Bernali, representing Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I want to also extend my appreciation to you. You've obviously have a thankless job, but you've, as far as I'm concerned, you know, you're real troopers. You hung in there. Thank you. As you know, we've commented on a number of occasions with respect to the development of the maps. And at this point, the Navajo Nation and the Navajo Nation Human Rights, who has the authority to speak on behalf of the Navajo Nation, has endorsed or supported CD1 as the way it is. We do want to keep Gila River, and we do want that to remain in CD1. I would like to also comment on the proposal presented by the Flagstaff City Manager to move certain tracts of LD7 into LD6. specifically the lands referred to as the Schultz Fire and the Timberline, as well as the trade-off of population between LD7 and LD6 in the areas of Sholo and Camp Verde. LD6 is a minority or majority minority district with a voting age population of 62% that meets the Voter Rights Act. You have heard Mr. Darden speak of the importance of the Espel Ranch area. Paramount to the Navajo Nation is electing candidates of our choice. In working on LD7, we met with the city of Flagstaff. We did compromise our position by leaving Doney Park in LD6. We are concerned that changes proposed may reduce the voter age population. Like the chairman of the Hopi tribe, the Navajo people have a community of interest with the border town of Winslow and the fee lands that surround Winslow. We thank you for including these areas in LD7. We hope you will maintain both LD1 and LD7 as the way they are presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I've got 5 more request to speak forms, all white. The next speaker is Lena Waller, or Wallen. And you'll have to, representing self, you'll have to tell us from what city or town.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Lena Wallen, Linawallen. First of all, I want to thank you for the commissioners that you are here today. So I really appreciate that, because I know that in the first hearing in Flagstaff, I give it the comment and such, and apparently you listen. So thank you. So I'm really happy with the city map that for us. And also, I know it's several tweaks. It might be that several people saying it about Sedona, Village of Oak Creek, and Purdy Valley that included and such. And also in terms of LD6, if other people also saying if we could have it as like some kind of trade in terms of Winslow and Sholo. But I'm here tonight really talking about Timberline. I don't have any relative or such in Arizona. I volunteer a lot in community. And among others, if that's just after fire and flood, the volunteering is we not really divided about whether that's city of Flagstaff, whether that county. We are one community. And I really have to emphasize about that. Please really just don't really divide us. Please include them in our LD6. And also the other thing that I am fortunate, actually live in Flagstaff, that represented with elected officials that talk what I want to express. And they talk really a lot better than I could express that. So please listen to the elected officials that from Flagstaff. And I really have to commend all your work. You work hard, and the result is shown. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mind, excuse me, do you mind just stating where you're from? What city or county? No problem.
I live in Flagstaff here for 19 years.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Margaret Kirch, representing self from Coconino County. Okay. How about Loris Taylor, representing self? And you can tell us what city or town you're from.
Good evening. My name is Loris Taylor, Taylor. I was raised on the Hopi Reservation, but I also call Doney Park home. I have lived in Flagstaff for more than 30 years, and I have raised my children here. While one could argue that Native American homelands are communities of interest to the entire state, I will instead focus on the following. My home was the poster child of the Schultz Fire, located on Moonbeam Drive in Sunset Crater Estates and featured on the front page of the Arizona Republic. The experience from this fire has established a stronger affinity of my neighborhood with Fernwood and Timberline. We suffered together and we are recovering together. As a result, I support the inclusion of these neighborhoods in Legislative District 6, and I support Nuvatukeovi or the Peaks, including tribal fee lands, to be placed in District 7. I also want to mention that there is a large Native population in Donny Park who maintain strong ties to reservation homelands. As for the congressional district, I believe that the neighboring tribes, including Hopi and Navajo, are very strong communities of interest with the city of Flagstaff. Not only do tribal communities share in educational interests, we share a strong cultural and historic relationship with Flagstaff. This entire region is dotted with Hopi ancestral villages. NAU, a land-grant institution and my alma mater, is home to the largest population of Native students in the state. Many tribal members like myself migrated to Flagstaff for educational and employment opportunities and made Flagstaff our home. However, we continue to maintain our connection and our deep roots to our tribal homelands. On an economic basis, the Hopi tribe owns property within the city limits of Flagstaff. Navajo and Hopi people consider Flagstaff as their shopping destination, bringing a source of revenue to the city and region that helps to sustain the local economy. I support Flagstaff in Congressional District 1. I believe that maintaining balance in both the legislative and congressional districts is important to our representational muster. Thank you for including tribal interests in the electoral and political interests of the state. And thank you also to the city of Flagstaff for hosting this hearing. Good
Thank
night.
you. Our next speaker is Arthur Piccinati, representing Self from Parks. Okay. And my last request to speak for him is Matthew Capalbi, representing Self from Coconino.
Excuse me. Good evening, Madam Chair. Commissioners, it's a pleasure to see you. I'm actually going to wear a different hat this evening. I was, for 5 years, the Northern Arizona Director for the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. And I'm going to speak regarding geographic features of this particular area and related interests. Excuse me. I'd like to speak to the issues regarding the Verde Valley and why it needs to remain whole. The Verde River is one of the most sensitive watersheds and critical watersheds for the water supply in Arizona. And having it split or actually going to the west is problematic. For those 5 years, I dealt almost daily with issues, resource management, protections, et cetera, pertaining to the Verde River and the Verde River watershed with Oak Creek, Beaver Creek, et cetera. And having that watershed, the whole Verde Valley, or either split or in a non-competitive district is a disservice to its interests. It needs a number of different protections as well as resources regarding stormwater, wastewater, watershed protection, watershed development, et cetera. And so with that, we believe, or I believe, that it is imperative that the entire Verde Valley, that the communities of Sedona, the village of Oak Creek, Clarkdale, Cornville, Jerome, Cottonwood, and Camp Verde need to be in one legislative district and also congressional district. Having them in a competitive district means that they will get a lot of attention from both sides when it does come to resource management and protections for the Verde River. I think that's imperative. I think it would be a disservice to the Verde River and its related communities in the Verde Valley if it went to legislative and congressional districts to the west that are not competitive. for that very reason. And also, being a resident here in Flagstaff, I just want to speak to the map maker. I know it's an issue trying to find the appropriate borderline regarding the Donny Park Timberline area. I think the best thing to do, rather than look at Highway 89, look at the Forest Service boundary that surrounds the peaks. I think that's a topographical feature that may be helpful in delineating the areas between the peaks and the flood and fire impacted areas. So as always, I thank you for your time, and I do hope that you do consider these matters. Excuse me. And also, I think if you having the Verde Valley in with Flagstaff definitely makes for a very, very competitive legislative as well as congressional district. And so, thank you as always, and welcome to Flag.
Thank you. Mayor Pressler would like to just say a few words, I think.
Thank you to all of you, and thank you to the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission. Thank you. I know Commissioner Freeman is watching from his home and office, and I know Commissioner Sturts wanted to be here. So thank you to your colleagues as well for tuning in, and thank you for your staff and all of the good work that you've done listening and working with our community. So just wanted to extend our thanks to you, and most importantly, to all the people from our region who have come out here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I had received this gift here from the Executive Director, Ray Blandine, and he'd asked that we present this to Mayor Pressler. I think this was
Oh.
That's awesome.
Commemorating the first meeting.
It's a huge picture of Commissioner Herrera's head. I'm going to hang it in my office. Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you. Wow, well, what an amazing turnout. I'm so impressed with the Flagstaff community for all of you participating in the process. It's really wonderful to have so many of you out here tonight, and those who came earlier. We really, really appreciate it and listened to everything you said. I'm sure that a couple of my fellow commissioners here, at least present tonight, would like to say a few words, so I'll give them the chance. Maybe I'll start with Vice Chair Herrera, since I think he's a lumberjack.
I was hoping you'd start with but that's...
I'm starting with Vice Chair Herrera.
You know, I really wish that I would have been here in person last time, but it just didn't work out that way. But I'm glad that I'm here today. And Flagstaff, this is where I went to school, both my undergrad and my master's, and where I met my wife. So Flagstaff is very dear to me, so I want to make sure that you are represented well. Even though I don't live in Flagstaff anymore, you are being represented in the commission, not only with myself, but also the other commissioners as well. So I think Brandon Kavanaugh said it best, that we thank the people that are here, whether they are disapproving of the maps or whether they approve of the maps. That doesn't matter to me. It's just that the fact that they're here, spending your time with us and giving us your opinion. But again, these are draft maps, so if you care about these maps, whether you want us to make changes or keep them the same, you need to continue pressing us and attend as many meetings as possible. Again, we have 23 more hearings, and then we have to make some changes. So this is the third hearing out of the 25, so we have a ways to go. I continue to recommend highly that you continue to attend these meetings or have people send us emails, messages of the changes you want us to make. So thank you again, and go Lumberjacks.
Thank you. Commissioner McNulty.
One of the best things about this whole process is that people that you meet along the way. And I've met some wonderful people in Flagstaff and made some new friends here. And I really appreciate that. I want to thank you all for the time and thoughtfulness and energy that you've put into this process. It benefits not just Northern Arizona, but the whole state to have members of a community like the members of your community have put so much energy into the redistricting process. Helps us do the job better and really does set an example for the rest of the state. And lastly, I'd just like to thank you for your hospitality this evening.
Thank you. I echo that as well. Thank you very much to everyone and for these amazing chambers that you're letting us host this meeting in. It's been really nice, and we greatly appreciate it. So with the only thing left on the agenda being adjournment, I declare this meeting adjourned at 9:42 p.m. Thanks again for coming.